Joining us now is security analyst G. Michael Verden, founder and CEO of the Lake Forest Group. Thank you for joining us this morning. I would imagine hospitals are very difficult to secure, at least from a parking lot standpoint.
Yeah, hospitals are a unique environment. You have so many visitors there that are not familiar with the property, with the building. And you're right, you're talking about the incident began outside in the parking lot, so it's quite a challenge from a security standpoint.
They had just had an active shooter drill the month prior. I imagine that's something that, obviously every hospital has to do. And in terms of what you saw and what you've heard so far, I know we're still getting details about the incident, but how would you look at, or how would you scrutinize what happened yesterday?
Yeah, and that's a great point. They did have an active shooter exercise, I believe, the month before. So what you have there is, and you did have staff locking themselves in, doing the hide component. There was people running. Unfortunately, you still have that dynamic of people not familiar with the code system and what to do in that type of scenario. And training is very important. Having a plan, which they have, and they have training. So they're doing all the right things. There's just so many other moving parts to these types of incidents.
So in that situation for an individual, I guess there comes a point where you have to say, I need to decide whether to run or hide. Is there any great way to figure that out, or is it just a gut instinct?
And that's a very common question because we're familiar with run, hide, fight. And human nature is to run. However, before you run, you have to determine, is there more than one shooter? What's the direction of the shots? Are you running towards the threat? So I always recommend that initially you try to hide, and then when it's safe to evacuate, you can run.
I covered a story it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where a woman was shot by her partner in a hospital parking lot. Fortunately, it didn't move into the hospital. But I'm curious, just in terms of security in a parking lot. I mean, these buildings have these huge parking lots. I imagine it's, from a security standpoint, it must be a beast to try and figure out, what's going on in each corner of these parking lots.
Correct, and that applies to like even sports venues. You have security incidents in parking lots. We've seen that. And you're right. I mean, the footprint of the property includes the parking lot. So if you really want to get very specific, you do need to control those parking lots. Yeah. That's where your security presence should begin. It comes down to budget, resources, staffing. It's difficult.
And so in terms of prevention for a corporation or a hospital or whatever it is, I would imagine a lot of employees don't want to go up to HR and say, hey, by the way, I'm having a problem at home. Is there anything a corporation can do to try and intervene or anything? Unfortunately,
that's a very common thread where there's the embarrassment factor of this was a domestic situation that deteriorated into an active shooter incident. So some people are reluctant, mostly women employees, they're reluctant to come forward. Once again, they're embarrassed. They're concerned about their professional standing within the organization. Thanks to the Me Too movement, there's been more transparency, but you're correct. There's a reluctancy. We look back at what happened yesterday when that engagement was broken off. The timeline is very important. If it was, let's say, 30 days ago, there would have been time to tell your employer, maybe be reassigned the victim, maybe not even go to work for a short time. But this is all retrospect,
sure,
and we don't know all the facts right now.
Yeah. Mike, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.